Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are going on a journey you probably shouldn't take alone through a night so ancient, so quiet that even the wind seems to hesitate. Picture it. The stars above you aren't the same constellations you'd see now. The air smells of wet grass, cold stone, and the musk of creatures that haven't walked this earth in thousands of years. Beneath your feet, the ground is uneven, scarred by time and the weight of titans. You stand on a plain so wide that the horizon curves gently away, as if trying to hide secrets from your curious eyes. You're here to follow the trail of the forgotten mammoth, those colossal wanderers who, without meaning to, redrew the map of the world beneath their feet. And between you and me, you probably won't survive a single night out here. One misstep and you might end up as nothing more than a curious fossil for some future species to puzzle over. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the edge of what was once an ancient floodplain, now dark and silent under the weight of the night sky. The moon hangs low, a pale slice casting enough silver light to guide your cautious steps. The ground beneath you feels soft in places, treacherous in others, as if unsure whether to give way. A breeze, sharp and carrying the scent of rain yet to fall, brushes against your cheek. Somewhere far off, a bird you don't recognize gives a long, mournful cry, like it's warning you to turn back. But of course you won't. You're here for the story. The plain stretches before you, a patchwork of grasses that sway like a sea frozen mid-motion. The odd thing is, the pattern of the grass is broken. Great scars cut through it, furrows in the earth, some so deep you could lie down and disappear from sight. You're walking on the night stage where mammoths once passed their feet, pressing paths into the earth so firmly that the land remembers even now. Historians still debate whether the mammoth trails were deliberate migrations along the same lines each season or the result of aimless wandering driven by the search for food. Either way, those trails carved more than memories, they carved the future courses of rivers. Your boots crunch on something brittle. You glance down, half expecting a bone, but it's only a piece of ancient wood so dry it crumbles in your fingers. The air feels thick now, like you're walking through history itself. A strange thought crosses your mind. This was once the territory of creatures so big that they shaped the very landscape beneath their feet. Imagine that your daily commute altering the geography. I bet you never thought your morning walk to the coffee shop lacked ambition until now. Somewhere nearby, the ground slopes down into a shallow depression, the first hint of the mammoth trail that would one day guide a river. You ease toward it, your footsteps careful, though the mammoth is never worried about such things. Each step of theirs punched down grasses, scattered stones, and left behind a memory stamped into soil. You can almost hear them, low rumbles like distant thunder, the shuffle of huge feet, the sound of tusks brushing against the trunks of sparse trees. And here's a fun fact to keep your mind occupied as you walk. The woolly mammoth's closest living relative is the Asian elephant. That's right. Your friendly neighborhood zoo elephant shares more in common with those Ice Age giants than you might think. A bit of perspective for you as you tread the forgotten paths of their ancestors. You pause for a moment listening. The plain hums with quiet. A cold wind skims the grasses. You know, back in the Ice Age, this region wasn't exactly barren. It was part of the Mammoth Steppe, the largest biome on Earth at the time. A vast, chilly grassland stretching from Western Europe to North America. And it thrived with life. Mammoths, of course, but also wild horses, reindeer, even lions. Real lions, mind you, not the kind you see in cartoons trying to befriend warthogs and meerkats. The ground here feels ancient, as if it's holding its breath, waiting for those heavy footfalls again. But they'll never come, will they? The mammoths are gone, their trails mostly erased except for spots like this where nature was too impressed to smooth things over completely. You wonder if thousands of years from now anyone will trace your steps with the same curiosity. Spoiler, probably not unless you're leaving behind some pretty serious footprints. As you move along, your fingers brush the tops of the grass, feeling the cool dew gather there. You catch sight of a few scattered stones, worn smooth by ages of wind and rain, like forgotten toys of the giant creatures that once ruled here. Every so often your foot lands in a hollow, so deep you nearly lose your balance. You look around, realizing that what seemed like random dips and rises in the land is actually a trail. A trail made by creatures so heavy, so determined that even time couldn't quite erase their passing. It's funny, isn't it? Mammoths, just by walking, reshape the world. Meanwhile, you and I trip over the same crack in the sidewalk every day. Nature's sense of humor, I guess? Oh, and speaking of humor, did you know that the mammoth's tusks could grow over 15 feet long? That's longer than most cars. Imagine parallel parking with those things. The stars wheel above as you follow the path into the deeper dark, where the land dips toward a low hollow. The Mammoth Trail, the one that will one day guide water trees, birds, and people, starts here in these forgotten footsteps. The air grows colder. The plain stretches out like a frozen sea. And you keep walking because now you want to see where this story goes. You keep moving, the chill settling into your bones as the trail ahead deepens. The grass parts unevenly where the ancient path of the mammoths carved its way through the earth. Each step you take now feels like walking through time, as if the ground beneath your boots remembers those colossal feet pressing down year after year, generation after generation. The air smells faintly of wet stone and old moss, as though the land itself has been waiting for someone to notice its scars. Above you, clouds slide across the stars, dimming the silver light, and for a moment, you lose the trail until your foot sinks suddenly into a wide, cracked depression. You've found it again, a single footprint, long dried, long forgotten, except by the soil. The size of it staggers you. You could lie down in it and not quite feel it. A single step of a woolly mammoth left behind like a giant's signature. Historians still debate whether these deep prints were the result of deliberate herd migrations or whether the mammoths wandered where the food was unconcerned, with leaving a legacy written in mud and stone. Either way, they left a trail that the earth could not quite forget. You follow the line of these footprints, each one blending into the next, worn down by rain, wind, and centuries of slow erosion. It's like walking along a map no one else can see. The path veers gently downhill toward a low area where water must have once gathered. You imagine the herd massive and unstoppable, trudging forward, heads low, tusks sweeping the grasses, eyes focused on the promise of distant water. Their passage pressed the earth so deeply that even now, thousands of years later, you can trace their steps. There's something eerily comforting about that, don't you think? That even long after a species vanishes, the marks it left behind still guide the world in small, quiet ways, like the way mammoth trails would eventually become riverbeds. The deep tracks channeling rainwater runoff and meltwater, shaping the land long after the creatures were gone. It's one of those odd bits of history that makes you wonder about all the invisible forces still guiding us today. You pause to catch your breath. The trail is steeper here, the footprints merging into a wide swath of trampled earth. You spot scattered stones that might once have been part of the Mammoth Steps, rocky patches, stones worn smooth by passing giants, their edges softened by time. Your hand brushes the surface of one, cool and gritty under your fingers. A reminder that the mammoths didn't just walk the land, they changed it one heavy step at a time. And speaking of steps, here's a fun off-topic fact for you kangaroos. Can't walk backward. Totally unrelated to mammoths, but I thought you'd appreciate the mental image. At least mammoths could go in reverse if they had to. Well, probably. I mean, with tusks that long, you'd want the option, right? The air grows heavier as you descend. The grass here is patchier, the soil darker, where water once gathered in the low spots between footprints. You can almost see the mammoths moving like shadows across the plain, their breath steaming in the cold night, their feet pressing the future river into being. The herd's passage wasn't random. They followed old instincts, paths passed down in memory leading to water sources that shifted with the climate and the ice. And even today, in some places, modern rivers still follow those ancient trails. A gust of wind stirs the grass around you, carrying with it a scent of distant rain. You glance up at the clouds darker now, hiding the stars. The night feels heavier, as if the plain itself is waiting for the mammoths to return. But you and I know they won't. The world changed, and they left it behind. Your feet find the rhythm of the trail. The depressions are so regular now that you could walk it blindfolded, feeling the ancient steps guide you forward. The ground is soft in places, cracked in others, the long scars of mammoth feet baked into it. It's humbling, really. You can build cities, raise monuments, fly rockets, but here in the quiet dark, it's the path of a herd that reminds you how small you are. And that's part of the magic of this place. The mammoths weren't trying to leave a mark. They weren't setting out to shape rivers or carve valleys. They just walked, driven by need, by hunger, by thirst. And in doing so, they changed the face of the world. The trail you're following tonight is one of the first strokes in the great map of the river that would one day flow here, born from the weight of those feet and the memory of water. Another odd fact to ponder while you walk the ancient mammoth steppe was home to ground squirrels the size of small dogs. Imagine that for a second. A world where the rodents could give your terrier a run for its money. Nature's sense of scale was definitely working overtime during the Ice Age. The wind picks up again, tugging at your clothes, urging you forward along the trail. The footprints grow shallower here, merging into a broad path where the herd's passage flattened the land. You can almost hear them, the rumble of feet, the creak of heavy bodies, the soft, rhythmic beat of 1,000 lives moving as one. And you follow, because where else would you go? The trail is a promise, a story written in earth and stone, and you're here to see where it leads. The night deepens. The clouds press lower. The mammoth trail stretches on before you, vanishing into the dark toward the water that once waited beyond the horizon. And you keep walking, guided by the forgotten feet of giants. The first cold drops of rain find you as you follow the trail deeper into the hollow of the plain. The air smells sharper. Now wet grass turns soil, and that electric tang that comes before a storm breaks wide open. The ground beneath your boots softens with each step, as if the land itself is preparing to be reshaped. You glance up just in time to see lightning fork across the sky, illuminating the plain in a stark white flash. For a heartbeat, you see it all, the scars of the mammoth trail stretching to the horizon, the grass bent low in the wind's breath, and the distant rise of hills that once watched over these herds. And then, the dark swallows it again. The storm isn't shy. Thunder follows hard on the heels of the lightning, a deep rolling growl that feels like the ghostly echo of those mammoth herds. You can almost imagine their massive forms in the gloom, pushing forward against the wind tusks, lowered ears flapping like sails in the storm. Historians still debate whether mammoths preferred to move during foul weather. Was it a way to hide from predators, or just the simple need to reach water no matter the sky's mood? No one really knows, but tonight, the storm seems like an old companion on this trail. Rain lashes down heavy and cold, soaking your clothes and dripping from your nose. The trail beneath you changes with every passing minute. Where once there were faint depressions, now small pools begin to form. The water gathers in the deep places first, the footprints, the worn furrows, turning them into mirrors that catch the fleeting light of each bolt of lightning. The mammoth trail becomes a temporary stream, guiding the runoff along the path carved out so long ago. It's here in moments like this that you see how the river's birth began. Not with a mighty flood or the strike of some cosmic hammer, but with countless small storms like this. The mammoth trail, pressed deep into the earth, offered the perfect channel for water. Each storm added a little more depth, a little more shape. 1,000 rains made a stream. 1,000 streams made a river, and all because a herd of mammoths walked the same way year after year. A sharp gust of wind nearly knocks you off balance and you stagger sideways, your boots sinking ankle-deep into the muddy trail. You mutter something under your breath, nothing profane of course, but let's just say it rhymes with duck. The mud clings to your boot, heavy and cold, and for a moment you consider whether this was how early humans felt trying to follow these mammoth paths in weather like this. Probably just as miserable, and probably just as determined. Here's an odd fact to chew on while you wrestle with the mud during the Ice Age. Giant beavers lived in North America. And I mean giant as in up to 8 feet long. Imagine one of those waddling by right now, probably looking just as fed up with the rain as you are. You push forward, the rain soaking your hair, your clothes plastered to your skin. The trail slopes downward where the prints merge into a shallow channel already running with water. You watch as the storm reshapes the land in real time. The footprints fill the edges, crumble, small streams join together, guided by the invisible hand of the trail beneath. You're witnessing the earliest moments of what will one day be a river. Not a mighty torrent, not yet, but a whisper of the water's path, hinted at by the mammoth's memory etched in earth. And that's the thing about storms like this. They don't just drench the land, they sculpt it. Bit by bit, storm by storm, they deepen the Mammoth Trail, turning foot-worn hollows into gullies, gullies into channels, channels into the skeleton of a river. The next time someone complains about a rainy day, just remind them without storms like this, we wouldn't have half the rivers that shaped human history. Though maybe don't tell them while they're trying to dry off. The thunder rolls again, louder this time, as if the land itself is grumbling at the weight of the sky. The trail ahead is a silver ribbon, under the storm gleaming with rainwater, guiding you toward the lowlands where the first true riverbed will one day form. You keep moving, boots squelching in the mud, hands tucked into your sleeves against the cold. The mammoths did this, you think. They walked, they endured, and in doing so, they built rivers without meaning to. That's quite the accidental legacy. Another flash of lightning splits the sky, and for just a second you see how the water gathers in the trail, how it flows, how it joins other trickles until it moves as one. A future river born in a storm shaped by feet that no longer walk the earth. The thought makes you smile despite the rain dripping off your nose and the mud sucking at your boots. There's something beautiful about it, isn't there? That even in their absence, the mammoths still guide the water, still shape the land. And here's a final thought for this stretch of the journey. Modern rivers in many parts of the world still follow ancient trails. Not just mammoth paths, but animal trails, game paths, migration routes. The water remembers what we forget. The land remembers what we overlook. And tonight, you're lucky enough to walk where the memory began. The storm eases a little as you follow the widening stream of water along the trail. The wind softens, the rain slows to a drizzle, and the plain stretches out before you once more. The Mammoth Trail is changing right beneath your feet, carved a little deeper by the storm, ready for the next step in its long journey to becoming a river. And you're just here to see it happen. The storm leaves behind a hush as it passes, like the land itself is catching its breath. You stand there, soaked through, watching as the water gathers along the Mammoth Trail, tracing each ancient footprint in silver threads. The trail slopes onward, and with every small trickle joining the next, you see how the path of the giants became more than just a memory. It became a guide for the water and one day for entire ecosystems. The air is cool now, sharp and clean, carrying the smell of fresh rain and wet earth. Above, the clouds begin to break, revealing slivers of star-washed sky. You move again, following the Mammoth Trail as it bends gently toward a low ridge. The ground here is firmer, marked with the deep, long scars left by countless feet. The mammoths weren't just moving blindly, driven by hunger. They were following something older than memory, the pull of water, the promise of survival. Historians still debate whether mammoths had some innate ability to sense distant water sources, or if they learned routes from their elders, passing them down like unwritten maps. Either way, their instincts carved the future into the ground. The trail narrows between two rises, forming a natural funnel. The footprints here are deeper, pressed down by thousands of tons of moving flesh and bone. You can almost feel the weight of them as you step where they stepped. The herd moved as one, driven by the need for water, their tusks sweeping aside saplings, their feet pounding the earth into submission. Each journey pressed the trail deeper, made it easier for the next storm's water to find its way. And it wasn't just the mammoths that followed these paths. Other creatures, bison, horses, even the great predators used the same routes. The Mammoth Trail wasn't just a path, it was a lifeline. You can almost hear them now, the low grumble of the mammoths, the sharp snort of bison, the soft pad of wolves, shadowing the herd. The plain wasn't empty back then. It was alive with sound, movement, purpose. The night air hums with echoes of that long-lost world as you walk. Your boots find their rhythm along the ancient trail, and for a moment, you forget the modern world entirely. It's just you, the stars, and the memory of giants. And maybe a few mosquitoes because, let's face it, nature has a twisted sense of humor. You stop at the crest of a low ridge, looking out over the plain where the trail continues. Below you, the depressions deepen, merging into a wider swale where water pools even now. It's easy to see how over time these footprints would channel the rains, creating the first hints of a stream. The mammoths, in their search for water, unwittingly shaped the land to hold it. The trail became a map for the rain itself. Oddly enough, this is where the mammoth story meets ours. Many modern highways and trade routes follow ancient animal paths. The Iroquois Trail. The Natchez Trace both began as game trails worn by creatures following the same instincts as those mammoths. So the next time you're stuck in traffic, just remember you're probably following in the footsteps of a giant. The breeze stirs the grass at your feet, and you crouch down, tracing one of the ancient depressions with your fingers. The soil is damp, cool, alive with the scent of rain and old roots. You wonder if the mammoths ever paused here, if they ever looked up at the stars and felt the pull of the path beneath them. Probably not. They weren't much for stargazing, I'd wager. But their feet knew the way, and that was enough. Here's a fun off-topic nugget for you. Mammoths had as many as 6 sets of teeth in their lifetimes. When one set wore down from grinding tough vegetation, a new set would push through. Imagine if we could do that, dentists would be out of business. You rise again and continue along the trail. The land begins to slope more noticeably now, the trail guiding you toward a shallow basin where water has always gathered. The mammoths, with their ancient wisdom, led you here. Even in their absence, their trail shows the way. You can see how the path deepened with each passing year, how the rainwater shaped it further, how the grass struggles to reclaim the scar. But the scar is too deep. The trail endures. The stars shine brighter now as the last of the clouds drift away. The plain stretches out before you, quiet, waiting. The Mammoth Trail winds onward, a promise written in earth and stone. And you follow, because the story isn't finished yet. You can almost picture it, can't you? The herd moving through this night, their breath steaming in the cold air, their massive forms outlined against the stars. Each step pressed the future a little deeper into the ground. Each journey shaped the river that will one day flow here. And tonight, you're part of that memory, walking where the giants once walked, seeing the world as they saw it, feeling the pull of the path beneath your feet. The land levels out beneath your feet as you descend from the ridge, and the trail widens again into a broad, beaten path where countless feet once passed. The ground here is scarred not just by mammoth footprints, but by the claws and paws of predators that shadowed the herds. The grass grows unevenly, patches torn up where old battles or hunts played out in the deep past. The night air carries a faint, musky tang, as if it still remembers the scent of those ancient hunters. And you pause, scanning the shadows, feeling that instinctive chill that comes when you sense you're not alone. The trail tells the story if you know how to read it. They're a set of shallow scrapes where massive claws once tore at the earth. Over there, a cluster of footprints that tightened together as if the mammoths had bunched up for protection. Historians still debate whether saber-toothed cats truly targeted mammoth calves or simply scavenged the weak and dying. But here on this ancient path, you see the evidence with your own eyes. The ground records a moment of fear of danger of a herd's desperate defense. Your boots crunch on something hard and you glance down to see a piece of bone bleached and cracked with age half buried in the soil. You pick it up, turning it over in your hands. It could be from a mammoth or perhaps from one of those great predators that stalked them. Either way, it's a reminder this trail wasn't just a lifeline, it was a battlefield. The air is thick with tension as if the plane is holding its breath, remembering. You move carefully, now your steps quieter, as though you might disturb ghosts. The trail narrows as it passes between two ancient stones, worn smooth by time. This was likely a favored ambush point, high ground for the cats, the narrow path forcing the herd into tight quarters where the vulnerable fell behind. The plain is empty now, but your imagination fills it with the low growl of a predator, the rumble of the herd, the crack of branches underfoot. You wonder what it must have been like to witness such a scene. Massive mammoths wheeling to protect their young tusks. Lowered ears flared, trumpeting in defiance. The saber-tooths, sleek and deadly, circling, looking for a weakness. The plain would have echoed with sound, with movement, with the raw drama of survival. And beneath it all, the trail deepened, the soil pressed down by the sheer force of life and death. And while we're on the subject of predators, here's a strange little off-topic tidbit. Ancient hyenas once roamed parts of Europe and Asia during the Ice Age, and they were much bigger than the ones you might see today. They weren't just scavengers, they were serious hunters. Imagine the soundtrack of that night on the plain. The wind picks up, tugging at your clothes, carrying with it the smell of wet grass and cold stone. The trail veers slightly now, skirting a low marshy patch that must have been a danger even back then. The mammoths knew to avoid it. You can see where their prints swing wide, the ground firmer along their chosen path. You follow, grateful for their ancient wisdom. Even in death, they're still guiding you. You crouch beside a deeper depression in the trail where water gathers in a dark pool. The edge is crumbled, worn by centuries of storms. This is where the trail began to change, where the erosion of countless feet and the power of water worked together to carve out what would one day be a river's skeleton. The predators didn't just shape the herd, they shaped the land too. Each chase, each ambush drove the mammoths along paths that pressed deeper into the earth, that funneled the rain, that guided the streams. The night grows quieter now, as if even the wind has paused to listen. The stars glimmer above, cold and distant, watching as you trace the forgotten path. You can almost hear the echo of that ancient world, the low grumble of mammoths, the hiss of cats in the dark, the splash of feet through marshy ground. The trail is more than a scar. It's a story written in earth and stone, told by the feet of giants and the claws of their hunters. And here's something to ponder as you walk. Many of today's river valleys, floodplains, and even city sites were first shaped by animal migrations. The land remembers what we forget. The mammoth trail beneath your boots isn't just a piece of history, it's a foundation, a beginning. And tonight, you're part of that long, unbroken chain. You move on the trail stretching before you, winding through the dark. The ground rises slightly, the path firm underfoot. The mammoths chose well, as always, the predators. They're long gone, but the memory of their hunt lingers in the shape of the land, in the story the trail tells. And you follow, eager to see where it leads next. The plain opens wider as you follow the trail further, and here the path deepens into something more than a collection of footprints. The rain from the storm still clings in shallow pools, glinting beneath the stars like broken pieces of a forgotten mirror. The trail has begun its transformation. You can see it plain as day even in the night's hush. What was once a sequence of individual prints has merged into a shallow gully, its edges softened by centuries of storms, its floor smoothed by time and water. The mammoths were accidental engineers, their relentless migrations carving out the channels that would guide water soil and eventually life. Your boots crunch on gravel washed down from higher ground by ages of rain. The path's depth surprises you. It's as if the earth gave way beneath the weight of those countless feet, surrendering inch by inch to the pressure of tusk-bearing giants. And the water. The water simply followed, eager to take the easiest route. Historians still debate whether mammoth herds understood how their movements altered the land, or whether their trail-making was nothing more than an unintended side effect of survival. Either way, they reshaped entire ecosystems with nothing but footsteps. The air is still damp from the storm, heavy with the scent of mud and grass, and that sweet, clean aroma that follows rain. The wind has quieted, leaving the world in a kind of expectant hush. You can hear the faint trickle of water gathering in the deepening gully guided along the mammoth's trail. A temporary stream for now, but give it a few millennia, and it will be something far greater. You crouch, fingers brushing the soft soil at the gully's edge. The earth gives slightly beneath your touch, fragile in the way that only ancient, well-worn ground can be. You step carefully along the trail, marveling at how the mammoth's accidental engineering set the stage for rivers, forests, and eventually human settlements. And speaking of human settlements, here's a fun side fact. Many of the world's oldest cities are built along rivers that owe their courses, at least in part, to ancient animal paths. Think about that. The next time you're stuck in city traffic, the mammoths were there first, and they didn't even need crosswalks. The trail widens where it meets a shallow basin, the gully becoming more pronounced. The ground here is darker, wetter, a perfect cradle for runoff to collect. Each storm, each season, each passing herd deepened the channel, helping shape the future river that would one day define this land. The mammoths weren't just travelers, they were sculptors, unwitting artists who painted with footfalls and rainwater. The stars gleam coldly overhead, and for a moment you imagine seeing the herds again, moving through the night like shadows. You picture the lead mammoth tusks gleaming in the moonlight, guiding the herd along the path carved by generations past. The younger ones follow, splashing through the shallow water, their feet pressing the trail a little deeper. The plain hums with the soft sounds of their passing, the rustle of grass, the slap of feet against wet earth, the occasional low rumble of communication. You blink and the vision fades, leaving only the empty trail and the night's hush. Here's something a little off-topic for you to chew on. Did you know ancient camels once roamed North America? That's right. Long before they became symbols of desert life, camels were part of the Ice Age menagerie, sharing these vast plains with mammoths, saber-tooths, and other giants. Nature has a way of keeping things interesting, doesn't it? You walk on the gully, deepening as the trail drops lower into the plain. The land seems to cup the water now, guiding it more surely along the path first pressed by mammoth feet. The occasional stone juts from the earth, worn smooth by the passage of giants and centuries of rain. You pause to rest a hand on one cool solid, a piece of the world that has endured. The mammoths moved mountains in their own quiet way, shifting the soil, directing the flow of water, laying the groundwork for the river that would one day bring life to this land. The trail bends gently, following the contours of the plain. You see how the gully twists and turns, shaped by both footfall and the natural lay of the land. The mammoths weren't architects, not in the way we think of it, but their unknowing design was no less enduring. The channel they pressed into the earth was ready to catch every storm, every flood, every melt of snow and ice. Over time, the gully would grow deeper, wider, until water claimed it completely. The night deepens around you, the stars bright against the black sky. The plain quiet except for the soft murmur of water following the path of giants. You feel small here, but not in a bad way. Small in the way that reminds you the world is old, and you are lucky to see even a sliver of its story. The mammoths didn't mean to leave this legacy, but they did. And tonight you walk where their footsteps shape the future. The first light of dawn creeps over the plain soft and pale, casting long shadows that stretch across the land. You stand at the edge of the gully, the air so cold that your breath clouds before your face, hanging there for a moment before the breeze carries it away. The night storm has left behind a world that feels clean as if washed of time's dust. The mammoth trail before you glistens with meltwater, a ribbon of silver snaking through the plain. The Ice Age held the world in its grip here, and this dawn feels like a glimpse into that frozen time. Your boots crunch on frost as you move forward, following the gully that the mammoth's feet first pressed into the earth. Now it channels the melt from distant ice, guiding it down toward lower ground. The water trickles along, whispering the beginning of a river that will one day carve through the land. Historians still debate whether mammoth migrations helped accelerate the formation of these water courses, or if the animals simply followed paths that nature had already prepared. But when you see the trail now filled with meltwater, it's hard not to give the mammoths some credit. The dawn light catches in the shallow pools along the trail, turning them into tiny mirrors, reflecting the sky's slow blush of pink and gold. You crouch beside one, dipping your fingers into the icy water. It's so cold it burns for a moment, and you pull your hand back, wiping it dry against your coat. The land hums with quiet. The storm is gone, the predators are gone, and the mammoths are gone. But the trail remains, holding the water as surely as it once held the feet of giants. A low hill rises ahead, the trail winding up its flank in a broad, shallow cut. You follow, boots slipping on patches of frost, heart pounding with the effort. The air smells of wet stone, frozen grass, and distant pine. At the crest, you pause, breath steaming, and look out across the plain. The mammoth trail stretches on a pale scar where frost clings to the damp soil. And where the trail dips, you see how the meltwater gathers, following the path of least resistance, the path pressed by feet that no longer walk the world. And here's a curious bit of trivia to warm you up while you catch your breath. The woolly mammoth's ears were small compared to modern elephants, designed to minimize heat loss in the cold. A natural adaptation to the Ice Age chill, and honestly, probably made them look a little cuter too. Not that the saber-tooths cared. The wind shifts, carrying with it a sharper edge. You pull your coat tighter, moving on. The trail grows deeper as it descends the far side of the hill, the meltwater flowing faster now, fed by small rivulets from the higher ground. Each storm, each thaw, each season of ice added its weight to the work of the mammoth's feet, deepening the channel, shaping the course of the future river. What began as footsteps became a gully, and what became a gully would one day become a stream. Nature's slow, patient engineering at its finest. You follow the trail into a hollow where the meltwater pools, forming a shallow pond. The surface ripples in the breeze, and for a moment you can almost see the reflection of the mammoths, the curve of a tusk, the shaggy bulk of a shoulder, the dark eye watching the horizon for the next landmark on their journey. The water holds their memory just as the land does. It always will. And speaking of memory, here's something odd for your mental collection during the Ice Age. There were giant sloths in the Americas that stood over 10 feet tall when upright. Imagine one of those sharing this trail. The mammoths must have thought they were seeing a walking haystack with claws. You leave the hollow behind, following the meltwater as it trickles along the deepening channel. The trail feels timeless here, the land shaped as much by ice and water as by mammoth feet. The river's bones are plain to see if you know how to look. The gully curves, gently shaped by the flow of meltwater, ready to carry more with every thaw. The mammoths weren't just walkers of the world. They were guides showing the water where to go, helping to shape the land that would come after them. The dawn brightens the sky, turning pale blue, the stars fading one by one. The cold eases just a little as the sun's first rays touch the plain. You stop for a moment, looking back along the trail. It glistens in the morning light, a silver thread stitching the past to the present. And you follow. Because this is the story you came to see, the story, written by giants told in water and stone, that still shapes the world today. The morning sun climbs higher, painting the plain in soft gold as you continue along the ancient trail. The ground here is uneven, carved deeper by centuries of meltwater and stamped down by feet both great and small. The Mammoth Trail widens at this point, flattening into a broad crossing where water once pooled during the spring thaws. It's easy to imagine the herds hesitating here, wary of the shifting mud and uncertain footing. And not just the mammoth's predators, too. You can almost see their shapes lingering at the edges of your vision. Saber-tooths crouched low in the grasses, wolves pacing along the ridges, their eyes fixed on the herd's weakest members. The air hums with tension even now. This place was more than just a trail. It was a battleground, a place of risk and reward. Historians still debate whether these crossing points influenced later human settlements, trade routes, and hunting grounds. Were the first people to settle near these spots drawn by the same reasons as the mammoth's water, shelter, and opportunity? Or did they come later following the bones and echoes of the giants that shaped the land before them? You move carefully, boots squelching in the soft earth. The ground bears the marks of ancient struggle, deep scars where tusks clashed hollows, where bodies once fell. The river that will one day flow here will remember these fights, carrying their memory downstream with every flood. The trail splits briefly as if the mammoths once divided their forces, some forging ahead, others circling back to protect the young or the injured. The land holds the story if you know how to read it. You pause beside a large depression, the earth sunken and filled now with reeds and standing water. This could have been the site of a mighty clash, mammoth against mammoth rival bulls competing for the right to lead the herd across. The thought makes you smile despite the chill in the air. Even mammoths had their pride, their stubbornness, their need to prove something. And in doing so, they left behind these marks that would one day help shape the flow of rivers and the boundaries of human tribes. A sharp breeze carries the scent of wet grass and distant pine. You pull your coat tighter, stepping around the water-filled hollow. The ground here feels spongy, as if still remembering the weight of the creatures that once fought and fell upon it. You can picture it, the clash of tusks, the shudder of the earth beneath their feet, the spray of mud and water as they battled for dominance at this crossing point. Nature's original traffic jam and no one honking a horn. And here's a curious off-topic fact to keep your mind busy. During the Ice Age, lions lived in Europe, and they were bigger than today's African lions. Imagine them slinking through the grasses here, eyeing the herds, calculating the perfect moment to strike. This plain wasn't just mammoth territory, it was a predator's buffet. The trail joins again, the two paths merging where the land rises slightly, offering firmer footing. The mammoths knew where to step, where the ground would hold them, where the water wouldn't drag them down. The crossing points they chose weren't random. They were tested by generations, pressed into the earth by thousands of feet, and remembered by the land long after the mammoths were gone. You follow the trail to higher ground where the plain opens wide and the wind tugs at your hair. The crossing lies behind you, but its memory lingers in the shape of the land, in the gullies that once filled with water, and the deep prints that still catch the rain. The future river will mark this spot, its bends and fords guided by the choices of giants, its banks shaped by the battles they fought. You pause at the ridge, looking back at the path you've walked. The trail gleams in the morning light, a silver thread running through the grass. And you wonder how many human feet have followed this same route, drawn by the promise of water, of game, of shelter. The mammoths came first. But we weren't far behind. The crossing points that once decided the fate of herds would one day decide the fate of villages, tribes, and kingdoms. The wind shifts again, carrying with it the sound of water trickling through the gully below. You smile listening to the quiet music of the land. The mammoths may be gone, but their story is still here, written in the shape of the earth, told in the flow of water, waiting for those who take the time to listen. And you're lucky enough to hear it tonight. The trail winds down from the ridge, curving like an old scar across the plain, and you follow its gentle bend toward a stretch where the land opens wide and empty. The morning light is stronger now, casting long shadows behind each rise and hollow. The Mammoth Path here is more than just a trail, it's a map, one laid down by feet so massive that the land itself still carries their imprint. You can see how the route shaped the terrain, not just in the path itself, but in the way the ground rises and falls, in the way the grasses grow in thick, uneven patches along its edge. The mammoths marked the map without ever meaning to their movements, carving landmarks that endure even now. You stop at a spot where the trail crosses a patch of exposed stone, the rock worn smooth and pale where countless feet once passed. The herd must have favored this route season after season, pressing the stone into a soft curve beneath their weight. Historians still debate whether these trails became permanent simply because they were easiest to walk, or if mammoths chose them for reasons we no longer understand. Some lost wisdom of the land, some ancient instinct that led them unerringly to water shelter and safety. The trail dips into a shallow basin where the earth is darker, richer, fed by centuries of runoff gathered along this path. The future river will cut through here, following the line first drawn by the mammoth's feet. You crouch, running your fingers through the damp soil, feeling the grit and moisture, the weight of history in your hand. The trail isn't just a mark on the land. It's a memory, one that the earth itself has kept safe through ice storm and time. And while we're pausing, here's a fun off-topic fact. Mammoths had a bump on the top of their skulls where muscles anchored their massive necks to support those heavy tusks. That's right, the Ice Age's original gym bros, built to carry the ultimate headgear. Imagine trying to balance those on a bad hair day. You rise and continue, boots crunching softly on the trail. The path widens again where the mammoths spread out, perhaps to graze, perhaps to rest. The ground here is uneven, broken by the passage of countless feet, and by the slow work of water that has followed the trail ever since. The shapes of the land, the small rises, the shallow hollows, the gentle bends still echo the movements of those ancient herds. The map they made was one of survival, but it became a blueprint for the river's valleys and even human roads that came later. You crest a low rise and the plain unfolds before you, vast and quiet. In the distance, you see the glint of water where the future river begins to gather itself. The Mammoth Trail points straight toward it, as if the giants who walked here left a signpost for those who followed. And indeed, many did follow. People, long after the mammoths were gone, found these trails and used them, their own footsteps layering new stories on top of the old. You pause at a cluster of boulders worn down to soft, rounded shapes by wind, rain, and time. The trail threads between them, and you can almost see the herd passing here, their massive bodies brushing against the stones, their tusks leaving faint grooves that the weather has softened but not erased. The mammoths didn't mean to leave these marks, but they did, and we still see them today if we know where to look. The wind stirs the grasses at your feet, and you take a deep breath, tasting the cool air, smelling the damp earth, the distant hint of pine. The trail continues, leading you onward, reminding you that the land remembers what we forget. The map the mammoths drew isn't just lines on a plain, it's the foundation of the world we walk today. And tonight, as you follow that ancient path, you're tracing the shapes of their memory step by step. The land dips gently now, as if bowing beneath the weight of the centuries. The Mammoth Trail widens into a shallow trough, its edges softened by the work of water and time. You follow it down into a hollow where the soil is dark, rich, and heavy with moisture. The air is cooler here, the breeze carrying the faint scent of standing water and old stone. Beneath your boots, the ground feels spongy as if it's still recovering from the thousands of years of footsteps and floods. And then you see them bones. At first, it's just a pale glint beneath the grass, but as you draw closer, the hollow reveals its secrets. Massive ribs arc from the soil like the ribs of a shipwreck. A tusk, half-buried, curves toward the sky, its surface worn smooth by the passage of wind and water. The skeleton of a mammoth long forgotten, unearthed by the river's slow, patient work. Historians still debate whether these were natural deaths or the result of a herd's misstep trapped by floodwaters injured in a crossing or simply worn down by age and hunger. But the bones are here, and they tell their story in silence. You crouch beside the tusk, tracing its curve with your fingers. The surface is cool, pitted with age, the color of old ivory. The mammoth that carried it once walked this very trail, helped shape it, and in death became part of it. The river that will one day flow here began as water gathered in the trail's depths, but bones like these fed its birth, snagging debris, slowing the flow, shaping the meanders that would define its course. And here's a strange side fact for you. Ancient scavengers, including giant vultures and Ice Age hyenas, likely feasted on carcasses like this one. Picture it, an entire ecosystem sustained by one fallen giant. Nature, in all its grim efficiency, wastes nothing. The hollow is quiet, save for the soft sound of water trickling along the trail's edge. You can see how floods would have stripped away the soil, revealing the skeleton carrying parts of it downstream, scattering bones across the plain. The mammoth's remains became part of the river's story as much as the water and the earth itself. Each flood, each storm reshaped the land a little more, guided by the bones as surely as by the trail. You step carefully among the scattered remains, the ground uneven, marked by the work of water and time. The hollow feels like a sacred place, a reminder of the cycle that shaped this land. The mammoths walked, they fell, and in falling, they helped build the river that would nourish generations to come. The trail isn't just a path. It's a graveyard, a nursery, a blueprint for the world that followed. The air shifts, carrying with it a faint, sweet smell of flowering grasses. The plain is reclaiming this place, softening its edges, hiding the bones beneath new growth. But the river remembers. Its course even now bends around the hollow, guided by the skeleton's remains, shaped by the memory of the giant that once lay here. And if you're wondering about odd Ice Age inhabitants, here's a gem. There was once an Ice Age beaver the size of a black bear. Now imagine that gnawing on fallen logs along this future riverbank. No wonder the mammoths kept moving. The trail leads you onward out of the hollow, following the gully that has become more stream than path. You glance back at the bones, at the place where the land keeps its oldest secrets. The river will continue its slow work, carving deeper, carrying pieces of the past downstream, weaving the memory of the mammoth into every bend, every bank, every floodplain it touches. The plain opens before you again, the trail guiding you toward the next chapter of its long, slow transformation. And you follow because the story isn't finished, not by a long shot. The trail narrows as it winds away from the hollow, the ground firmer now, packed by centuries of water debris and time. The sun climbs higher, casting a warm glow over the plain and setting the grasses alight with gold. You walk in the shadow of giants still, but now something else joins the story. The ground bears newer marks, fresher than those of the mammoth. Scattered hearthstones. A flake of flint. The ghost of a footprint, smaller, lighter, human. The mammoth trail, once traveled only by the feet of giants, has begun to carry a new kind of wanderer. The first humans to follow this path came not as conquerors, but as fellow survivors. Hunters, foragers, families drawn by the same promises that lured the mammoth's water food shelter. They moved along the mammoth trail because it made sense. The land was already shaped to guide them. Historians still debate whether early humans understood they were walking where mammoths had gone or whether they simply followed the easiest route. But their fires, their tools, their footprints added new layers to the story written in the earth. You pause beside a shallow depression where ancient fire pits once burned. The soil here is dark stained with the memory of charcoal and ash. A fragment of bone peeks from the earth, not mammoth this time, but the remains of a smaller meal, maybe a hare, maybe a bird. The people who camped here left little behind, but the land remembers. You can almost hear them in the hush of the plain, the soft murmur of voices, the crackle of fire, the whisper of flint on stone as tools were shaped by hand. The air carries the faint scent of smoke, though you know it's just your imagination. The plain is empty now, but once it hummed with life. People and mammoths shared this space, not always at the same time, but always connected by the trail that guided them both. You step carefully around the old hearth, feeling a strange kinship with those long-vanished travelers. Like you, they followed the trail, searching for the river, for a place to rest, for a place to belong. And while we're thinking about survival, here's a fun off-topic fact. Ancient humans likely used mammoth bones to build shelters on the wind-scoured plains of Ice Age Europe. Picture that your house framed by the ribs of a giant. Talk about sturdy construction. The trail leads you onward past patches where the grass grows taller and thicker, fed by the runoff that still follows the mammoth's path. The ground is littered with small stones, some broken, some flaked, as if an ancient napper left them behind. You can almost see him crouched in the shadow of a mammoth's memory, working by firelight to shape a blade that might mean the difference between life and death. The stream that runs along the trail's edge is stronger now, fed by springs and the last of the meltwater. It follows the path laid down by feet long gone, its course shaped by the needs of mammoths and humans alike. The land here feels old, layered with the stories of all who passed this way. The river that will one day flow here is already written in those stories, waiting to be revealed. You pause at a bend in the trail where the ground rises slightly and the view stretches wide across the plain. The mammoth trail, the human footprints, the faint line of the future river. All of it connects. All of it endures. The wind tugs at your coat as if urging you to keep going, to follow the trail to its end. And you do, because the story of the river, of the trail, of the people and giants who shaped it is far from finished. The trail deepens as you walk, and it no longer feels like a simple path worn by feet. It feels like the skeleton of something greater, a river in its earliest form waiting to be filled. The ground slopes more noticeably, now the gully carved by centuries of storms and meltwater. You follow the gentle curve of its banks, the sides smoothed and widened by the slow, relentless work of time. What the mammoth started with their footfalls, the elements continued, turning a trail into a channel into a stream bed into the beginning of a river that will one day feed entire valleys. The air is warmer here, the breeze softer, carrying the scent of wet soil and new grass. The stream beside the trail trickles, steadily fed by hidden springs and the runoff from distant hills. Its voice is soft but sure, like the land itself whispering the story of its making. You pause at a bend where the gully widens into a small pool, the water clear enough to reflect the sky. Stones lie scattered at its edge, some rounded smooth by the work of water, others sharp broken perhaps by frost or the passing of hooves long ago. Historians still debate whether it was the mammoth's trail that determined the river's final course, or whether the water's natural pull found the path the mammoths happened to walk. But here, standing at the edge of this newborn river, it feels like the two shaped each other, giant feet and flowing water working together over centuries to carve the land. You move along the stream, watching how it hugs the trail, following its every bend, filling the places where the mammoths pressed deepest. The land cradles the water like it was meant to be here. You can almost hear the echo of those ancient feet, the splash of water as the mammoths crossed the soft call of birds that followed the river's promise. The trail isn't just a memory of where the mammoths walked. It's a blueprint for life drawn in mud, stone, and water. The banks are higher now, more defined. Small plants cling to their sides, grasses, reeds, tiny flowers that nod in the breeze. The river's birth has given them a home just as it will one day give homes to forests, animals, and people. The channel grows deeper, shaped not just by feet and storms, but by the slow, patient carving of water finding its way. Here's a curious little off-topic nugget for you. Did you know that prehistoric dragonflies once had wingspans of over 2 feet? Imagine one of those buzzing over this newborn river, hunting smaller insects gliding through the same air the mammoths breathed. Nature's designs can be both beautiful and terrifying. The trail bends again, the stream curling with it, the two inseparable now. Where once the mammoth trail guided the water now, the water deepens, the trail turning it into a true riverbed. The plain slopes gently down, and you can see where the river will one day wind its way across the land, feeding marshes, forests, and fields. The future is written in the shape of the land, and you are walking its first draft. The air feels alive here. The sound of water is stronger, the grass is richer, the plain no longer empty but waiting for the river to take its full shape, waiting for the creatures and people who will come to drink, to fish, to settle along its banks. The mammoths are long gone, but their trail remains filled now with the promise of water and life. You pause at a spot where the stream tumbles over stones, the first hint of the rapids that will one day form. The sound is soft but steady, like the heartbeat of the land. And you follow because this river, born of footsteps and storms, still has a story to tell. The land ahead feels quieter now. You walk along the river's infant path, and though the stream flows steady beside you, there's an emptiness in the air. The trail that once thrummed with life, mammoth footfalls. The calls of calves, the rustling march of the herd is silent. The mammoths are gone. You feel it in the way the plain stretches out vast and waiting, as if hoping for the return of its lost giants. The river, still shaping itself, carries their memory in its bends and banks, but the great herds will not walk here again. You follow the trail where it narrows and rises slightly along a ridge. The prints are fainter now, softened by time, and the slow work of the water that fills them. The last mammoths to pass this way left only the lightest marks, their feet falling on ground already reshaped by generations before. Historians still debate exactly when and how the mammoths disappeared. Was it the warming climate that thinned their numbers, the pressure of human hunters, or some combination of both? The trail offers no answers, only the quiet echo of what once was. You pause at a small outcrop where the view opens wide across the plain. The river glints in the sunlight, winding through the land like a silver thread. It follows the mammoth trail, still the course set by feet that no longer walk. You wonder what the last mammoth saw as it stood here. The same hills, the same sky, the same river beginning its slow journey. Did it sense the end of its kind? Did it hesitate, hearing no other footfalls behind it? Or did it simply walk on, following the path as its ancestors had always done? The air is warm now, the breeze soft, carrying the scent of water and wildflowers. The land is changing. Where once the mammoths roamed, the river will soon rule. You step carefully along the trail, feeling the weight of absence all around you. The grasses sway, the birds call, the water murmurs, but the giant shadows are gone. The trail is theirs no longer, but the river will remember. And here's a strange little off-topic fact to lighten the mood on Wrangel Island. A remote outpost off the coast of Siberia, mammoths survived thousands of years longer than on the mainland. Imagine that tiny, isolated mammoth populations holding out against time on a frozen island while the rest of the world moved on. The trail descends toward the river, the prints fading into the land's natural contours. The mammoth's mark is part of the plain, now inseparable from the river's course, the soil's richness, the life that will grow here. You crouch beside the water watching as it slides over stone and soil, carrying fragments of the trail downstream. The river is the last storyteller, and it tells the tale in every curve, every flood, every glint of sunlight on its surface. You rise, brushing the dust from your hands. The plain stretches on the river, winding through it, the mammoth's memory written in its flow. The last of the herd may have vanished, but their path remains guiding water life and history forward. And you walk on because the story isn't over yet. The trail softens even further as you follow it. The mammoth prints now fully blended into the river's path. The land here feels old and quiet, the kind of quiet that comes not from emptiness but from the weight of stories too ancient to speak aloud. The river, still young in the grand scheme of things, winds gently through the plain, its course set by the choices of giants who never meant to shape the world so deeply. But what began as a trail of survival has become a ribbon of legend. And the funny thing is, no one remembers the mammoths. People came as they always do, settling along the river's banks. They gave the river names tied to their gods, their heroes, their own small histories. They told stories of giants who once shaped the land of monsters, who carved valleys with their claws of spirits, who guided the water's flow. But they forgot the real giants, the mammoths who marked the land with nothing but their footsteps. Historians still debate which legends, if any, can be traced to the memory of these great herds. Were the gods of old river myths inspired by the mammoth trails? Or were the mammoths simply erased by time, their stories swallowed by newer tales? You pause where the river bends around a great stone half buried in the bank. The locals once called it the tooth of the earth, believing it to be a relic of some ancient beast. You smile, knowing it was likely shaped by the same forces that guided the mammoth trailwater time and the slow, steady weight of passing feet. The legends made the river sacred, its origins tied to gods and monsters. But the truth is quieter, humbler. The river's path was drawn by animals looking for water, by storms, by patience. And here's an odd off-topic bit to chew on in medieval Europe. Mammoth bones were often mistaken for the remains of dragons. People dug them up, marveled at the size, and wove them into the myths of their time. Imagine the surprise if they'd known they were holding the bones of a vegetarian. The trail fades into the river's bank, now lost beneath reeds and willows. The water glides by, carrying the memory of storms and footsteps far downstream. The people who came after the mammoths built villages along its course, fished in its depths, and passed down stories of river spirits who shaped the land. The mammoths were forgotten, their trail hidden beneath the legends of men. You walk along the bank, the river at your side, the land rich with the life it now supports. The trail is gone to the eye, but you know it's still there beneath the soil, beneath the water, beneath the stories told around ancient fires. The mammoth trail became the river. The river became the lifeblood of those who came after. And the giants who shaped it, they sleep beneath the soil, remembered only by the land itself. You pause as the sun sinks low, the light turning the river to gold. The plain hums softly with the sound of water, of wind, of life. The legends live on, but the truth of the trail is hidden quiet, waiting for someone like you to notice. And tonight, you have? The river runs quiet now, the last light of day turning its surface to molten gold as it winds through the plain. You walk slowly along its edge, feeling the weight of the journey settle into your bones. The mammoth trail, once so clear beneath your feet, has vanished into the river's flow. But you know it's still there beneath the water, beneath the soil, beneath the layers of time that have softened its marks. The river's bends, its shallows, its hidden depths, all of them trace the memory of the trail that came before. The land here feels timeless. The grasses sway gently in the evening breeze, and the trees along the banks lean toward the water, their roots thirsty for the life it offers. Birds call softly from the reeds, and somewhere, a fish breaks the surface with a soft splash. The river moves on as it always has, carrying the forgotten footsteps of the giants who shaped its course. You sit at the water's edge watching the flow, feeling the hush of evening settle over the plain. The air smells of cool water, of damp earth, of old stone. It smells like memory. Historians still debate whether rivers like this one owe their paths more to the forces of water and weather or to the trails of the great beasts that once walked the land. But as you sit here listening to the river's song, you can feel the truth in your bones. The mammoths left more than footprints. They left a map, a guide for the water, for the land, for the people who would come long after they were gone. Their trail became the river became the heart of the plain. And tonight, for just a moment, you have seen it for what it truly is, the quiet flow of memory. Here's a final odd little fact to leave you with. The woolly mammoth's DNA was so resilient that traces of it have been found in permafrosts tens of thousands of years old. Even in the smallest pieces they endured, just like their trail, just like this river. The night deepens and the plain fades into shadow. The river glimmers in the starlight, its path sure, its purpose steady. You rest there a little longer, listening to the soft murmur of the water, letting the quiet wrap around you like a blanket. The Mammoth Trail is gone, but its story flows on, carried by the river, whispered by the wind, waiting for someone like you to hear it. Now, slow your breathing. Ease your thoughts and let the final image blur into a gentle haze, the river winding through the plain, the stars watching from above, the land at peace beneath the weight of memory. The mammoths may be gone, but their trail remains hidden in plain sight, part of the world we walk each day.